Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loki here. Join me today as I answer your overwintering plant questions. So let's go. Before I begin, I have a lot of plants I'm going to be potting up while I'm chatting with you. This is a job that just needs to get done, so I'm going to quickly show you what I have going on in here, but then we're going to get into the questions. Over in this corner, I have dead nettle or lamium. That's a perennial where I live. I'll be potting them up, and those plants are going to go outdoors for the winter. I'm going to be healing the pots into the ground, which basically means sinking the pots in the ground so that the plants can overwinter outdoors. In case you're wondering where I got all that lamium from, they came from a whole bunch of container pots that I had all around my yard. Hanging baskets, window boxes, and different pots and containers. This next grouping of plants, those are creeping jenny. Those are also a hardy perennial. Those also came from lots of different container pots, and those will get potted up and healed into the ground as well, outdoors. This right here is a Lismachia. It might be hardy in my area, but honestly, I've never had it outdoors. I've only overwintered it in my garage. So for the Lismachia, I will be overwintering that again indoors in my unheated garage. And then I have some hosta that look really sad right now. They are also going to get potted up and healed into my ground outdoors for the winter. I wanted to make this video as a follow-up to many of the other videos I've made recently when it comes to overwintering all sorts of different plants, be it geraniums in a bare root fashion or corms, bulbs, and tubers like those of canna lilies, calla lilies, tuberous begonias. We have elephant ear, and there are even dahlias. But then there are a bunch of plants that I like to overwinter that are not hardy in my zone, and I like to overwinter them in my unheated garage. I've been doing that process for a number of years, and I like sharing that process with you in case it gives you ideas of things you can also overwinter. Well, I've gotten a lot of different questions, a lot of great questions from all of you. And first of all, thank you for asking the questions. I'm trying to answer them the best that I can in a timely fashion to help you out. But I figured in case you've missed some of those questions and my responses, I might as well make a video with some of the more popular questions that I'm seeing out there, so that I can answer them and help you out as you're getting ready to overwinter some of your plants. Well, what I'll do is put a link to a playlist that I have that has to do with overwintering plants. And at your leisure, check out that playlist and see if there's some videos that are helpful for you. I'm getting a lot of questions about this space where I overwinter a lot of my plants. I'm currently sitting in that space. This is my unheated garage. And a lot of you want to know if this unheated garage has windows in it. It does have some windows in it, and a little bit of light comes into this space. But what I want to share with you is you can overwinter many plants in a dormant state without having any windows in your space. But it all comes down to the plant that you're trying to overwinter. Always do your research, because there are some plants that will not overwinter without a little bit of light or without a lot of light. But I don't put any additional grow lights or anything like that on top of the plants that I'm overwintering in my garage. They just have whatever small amount of light is coming in through the windows that are here in my garage. In fact, I even have 2 windows that have the blinds pulled down in the garage, and they're pulled down all winter long. I could open them up, but I never have before. So that just shows you that these plants are truly dormant. They're not getting a lot of light. Another question that I'm getting a lot of is about watering. How much to water these plants? And I can't stress it enough. If you are trying to overwinter a plant in a dormant state, meaning you're not really doing a lot to it, it's just going to sleep for the winter, you can kill the plant very easily if you're giving it too much water. The bigger the pot, the more water the plant will need. The smaller the pot, the less water the plant will need. I really only like to water my plants once a month, and that's during those coldest parts of the winter. And for us here in New Hampshire, Zone 5B, that tends to be the months of December, January, February, March, and even April. It's actually many months. During those months, I am checking on those plants once a month, and I'm giving them a very, very small drink of water. But it's going to vary from plant to plant. I literally check each plant. I pick it up. I see how heavy the pot is. If the plant seems very light, it gets a little more water. If the plant seems pretty heavy still, it doesn't get any water. So I take it on a plant-by-plant basis. Another question that I've been getting asked is about overwintering plants indoors versus outdoors. So the first time I ever tried to overwinter a plant, I brought the plant inside. I don't even remember. It was a number of years ago. I don't remember if I treated the plant for insect pressure. I don't remember if I changed the soil. I kind of feel like I must have changed the soil. I don't think I would have just brought the plant in as is, but it doesn't matter. What ended up happening was within probably a week, I had an infestation of bugs. I don't remember if they were fungus gnats or if they were mealy bugs or the little white flies that you find on plants. It doesn't matter what it was. All I know was I was eked out by it, and I did not want all these little flying insects in my house. And the plant that I was trying to overwinter, I think it was maybe a coleus or some sort of double impatiens. It was something that wasn't very easy to overwinter unless you brought it inside and treated it as a house plant. So I immediately got rid of that plant and said, nope, not doing that ever again. And never say never, but it's been ever since that experience, I haven't done it again. I'm considering trying it again this year for maybe a couple of select plants. We'll see. And again, those plants might be something like a New Guinea impatiens, something that I myself have not had luck overwintering with in my unheated garage for that long of a period of time. My experience has been there are certain plants that just don't overwinter well in this type of environment in my garage. And I feel like generally it's those plants that are very watery, something like a coleus or an impatiens. I feel like they almost have to be brought inside where it's a little bit warmer, where they're going to be under grow lights. That's just my experience. I could be wrong. I have not experimented with those plants enough to say that for sure. But plants that are more, I would say, rigid, have a woodier stem, those plants just seem to do a little bit better for me when it comes to overwintering them in this space. I've seen some comments about dahlias, and some people saying that they've had a lot of success, other people saying that they've struggled. Certain plants are trickier to overwinter than others, but once you figure out a way that works well for you, if you have a good thing going, I say don't change it. Ever since I started overwintering dahlias a number of years ago using peat moss and not dividing the dahlias until the springtime, that process has really worked for me. So I don't see a reason for me to change that. But for you, maybe that process has not worked well for you, and you've tried it a number of times. You might have to try something different. I've heard some people say that they have tried the process of saran wrap and it's worked wonderfully for them. I've heard other people say they tried that process and it didn't work for them. It could be environmental factors. It could be user factors. Maybe it's something on your end that you didn't do right. You know, it's hard to tell. But if you've tried a certain method a number of times, more than once, I'd say 3 times. If you tried it 3 times and it still hasn't worked, maybe it's time to try something different. Have I lost overwintered plants before? Absolutely. I think probably anyone that's tried overwintering a plant has lost a plant. In fact, I have to share, I'm a little sad, the elephant ears that I got for free, so they were free, that I got from a local park. That day, in order for me to bring them home, I had to cut them down. They wouldn't have fit in my car. So a frost had not hit them yet, so that might have been part of the issue. So the bulbs were still alive. They were not told to go dormant and go to sleep. And then I cut them off. I cut the tops off, brought them home, and then cut them down even more. And then I think I just messed around with them too much, and I had them in my barn. And my barn is very cold. I mean, we had some nights that were 28, 29 degrees Fahrenheit. So in the barn, it was definitely very cold. I think, unfortunately, the bulbs that I was trying to overwinter, the elephant ear bulbs, did not make it. I'm still holding on to hope, but I do have some elephant ear bulbs that I bought that I have kept in pots and containers. Those have been coming into where I'm sitting right now in this garage, which is definitely warmer. So fingers crossed. But it is my very first year trying to overwinter elephant ear bulbs. I've heard it's super easy, almost easier than dahlias. So if I don't get any of my elephant ear bulbs to overwinter, I'm not going to lose hope, and I will try again next year. But I'll keep you posted on how those ones in the pots do. But I wanted to share that with you because you feel a little sad when you lose a plant that you were trying to overwinter, but then you have to get over it and say, I'm going to try it again next year, so don't give up. Some of the comments that I've been seeing about mums has to do with, why am I not just planting them out in the landscape? If I lived in a much warmer area, I could definitely take the mums and put them in the ground. Right now it's early November. I could definitely get away with doing that. But in much colder areas like zone 5 or lower, it's really too late. You might get lucky if you put your mums in the ground in early November, but usually the mums take a long time for their roots to establish. So given our growing season being much shorter and the fact that the ground is going to freeze within a few weeks, it's a little too late for me to be taking mums right now and putting them in the ground and hoping that they come back for me. That's often why your mums don't return for you when you take them and you put them in the ground. If you live in a much colder area, or you live in an area that's very dry and you take mums and you put them in the ground, there's so many different factors on why your mums don't return for you. So where I live, it just makes sense for me to take the mums that I have, which I have a handful of them, and they're ones that I either bought on clearance or I was given them for free, and I'm going to baby them for the winter in my garage. And then early spring, they will go in the ground. And then I don't need to mess with them ever again. Every year they'll come back for me after that. It's basically like just, I need to reset that cycle. I need to limp those mums along, the ones that I bought or I got this year, this fall, limp them along until springtime, get them in the ground. After that, I'm not digging them out anymore. I can take them out and move them and divide them, but they will be fine, and that's how I get them to come back for me as a perennial. So they are a perennial to start with, but they are a type of perennial that prefers to be planted in my zone during the spring months. I've gotten a lot of comments or questions about why do I take plants out of pots? Why wouldn't it just be easier for me to bring the potted plant into my garage and just overwinter the canna lilies and the calla lilies and all the different plants, just overwinter them in their pots? And it definitely would, absolutely. It's so much easier to take dahlias, leave them in their pots, bring the pot in, and then basically the bulbs start waking up in the late winter, early spring for all these different types of plants. And then you just bring the pot back outside. Totally so much easier. The issue is when you have 50 pots. I mean, between all my hanging baskets, my window boxes, all my container pots, I have probably more than 50. I don't have enough room in my garage. And not only that, I like to change up things. Maybe one year I'll do the dahlias in a pot with a few different types of plants. The next year I want to not have dahlias in pots. I want to have them in the landscape. It just basically comes down to space. It takes a lot less space for me to dismantle, take apart all of these pots and then store all my dahlia tubers in cardboard boxes, all my canna lilies, all my calla lilies in cardboard boxes, even the pelargoniums or zonal geraniums. So much easier for me to store those bare root and just forget about them for the winter, just check on them once a month. And then next spring, I will pot them up again, and I might choose different pots. I might not want to have them in the same pots they were in the previous season. And that's the reason why I do what I do. But you can definitely just take your potted plants and bring that pot inside and overwinter it in the pot that it's in. I had a question about the overwintering of bare root geraniums. When it comes to the box that they're in, the cardboard box or the bag, do you close it fully or do you leave it slightly open? And the answer is you want to leave it slightly open. I basically take the flaps and I just overlap them so there's a little bit of an opening in the top, because you want them to breathe a little bit. So when it comes to the corms, tubers, bulbs, as well as my bare root geraniums, I prefer to have all of them in cardboard boxes or in a bag. Depends on what they are, because those materials are breathable. If it was a plastic tote, it's not as breathable. It still might work, and I know people have stored some of those type of things inside of a plastic tote, but I've always used something more breathable, like the cardboard box or a bag. The big thing is just leaving the top open so things can breathe in there. Another question I got was about plants and how much of a dormancy period do plants need? That's actually a really good question. My best answer I can give for that, and I know I say it a lot, is it depends on the plant and it depends on your climate. In other words, where I live, all these plants that I'm trying to overwinter, they're going to die if they go outside. It's just too cold for them. So the overwintering process for me has to begin before a frost hits them. And sometimes I start that process a month before a frost hits them for the simple reason that I have a lot of plants that I'm trying to overwinter. And you've seen that in my videos that I started this process quite a while ago, and I'm still doing it. So usually you want to start the overwintering process for a tender plant before a frost hits it. But some plants are more tolerant of a frost than others. Some plants you have to start the process when nighttime temperatures are below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's where it's important to research the plant that you're trying to overwinter and see what is the lowest temperature that that plant can withstand. And then when it comes to when do you take plants out of dormancy, for me it's going to happen when my average last frost date is approaching. And a lot of times here in New Hampshire, that's the middle of May. It's a long time. We have such a short growing season, but I will not complain because that's just the way it is, and that's, I have to accept it. So a lot of my plants, I start bringing them outside just to get a little bit of sun when the temperatures are, I'd say, 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit during the daytime. That can happen sometime probably in April, I'm guessing. I can start bringing out plants so they can get a little bit of sun and be happy, but then they got to come back in at night. Where you live, you might just have to protect your plants for 2 freezes, and other than that, the plants are happy as can be outside. It totally varies on the plant and where you live. But then there are plants that I wake up and try to pre-sprout so that I'm extending the amount of time I can enjoy those plants. A good example would be dahlias. I definitely will be pre-sprouting my dahlia tubers. I usually do. And I usually start that process, I think it's probably about a month or a month and a half before my average last frost date. So sometime in like early April or so is when I start pre-sprouting them to wake them up. And I can do that a couple of different ways. I can bring all the tubers inside and put them under my grow lights, but I don't do that because I don't have the room. Or I can pre-sprout them and I put them on what I call my rolling cart, and they go outside on those warm days and they get sun and they get a little bit of warmth, not a lot of warmth, not as much as they would if they were in the house, but then they come back in at night. So it's going to depend on the plant and when I wake the plants up. Another one actually that I'm thinking of right now are those zonal geraniums. I like to wake those up. I've made videos in the past. I just can't remember the exact date, and it's going to vary depending on my mood. I might wake them up as early as February just because I'm looking for them to wake up and I want to take cuttings off of them. So there's all these guidelines on when you should wake up your dormant geraniums at a minimum, or you can extend that and wake them up even earlier than what everyone says to wake them up at so that you can take cuttings off of them and enjoy their blooms inside. So the best advice I can give is research each individual plant to see when should they go dormant, or when should you be bringing them in for protection, and then when can you bring them back outside. And actually, here's a good example. The plant that I've been working with during this video, it's called Lismachia zixenchristinii. I'm going to put it up on the screen because I'm totally butchering its name. I got a cutting of this from a container pot. It was like downtown, town right near me. It was in their container pot, and I took some cuttings. I rooted them. This was probably 3 years ago now. I've never seen this plant in a nursery, to be honest with you. I love it. It's so pretty. So I want to share a story. So I have kept this in my garage, right? And then it goes out during the summer and it's in my container pots. And then it comes back in the garage and it overwinters in here. And not last winter, but the winter before, I sprayed it down and I brought it inside during the middle of winter and brought it under my grow lights where it's warmer in the house. And again, I did it sometime in the middle of winter and it started to wake up, and then the plants looked gorgeous. They were just trailing and looking so pretty. Last winter, I said, no, I'm not doing that. I just don't have the time. I don't have the space. And I kept them in the space here in my garage. They stayed alive and they would get rolled out in April and get a little bit of sun. They come back in. I guess my point is, they did wake up, they did put on some growth, but they didn't put on as much growth as the previous year when I sprayed them off for any bugs and insects and I brought them inside. and they totally took off inside. It just depends on how quickly you want your plants to wake up, how important that is for you. For me, some years it just depends, and actually the same is true for my Diplodenia. I don't bring those inside. I keep them on the rolling cart here in the garage, and then they come outside slowly in April, and they didn't bloom for me until I think like June. If I had brought them inside and put them in warmth and under my grow lights and woken them up earlier, they absolutely would have bloomed for me earlier. I just didn't want to go through the effort. So it just really depends on how quickly you want your plants to do something for you. You know, I'm glad I'm in here in my garage talking to you, and hopefully you're listening, because if I lived in an area where people were walking by, they'd probably think, who is she talking to? I'd tell them I'm talking to my gardening friends. But I will admit, when I do jobs like this and I'm talking to you, I might only get 5 pots potted up. And as soon as I turn that camera off, I need to go to town and get this dealt with. I need to get this done. I've had questions on how far to cut plants back that you want to overwinter or that you want to heal into your ground. So when I have like a trailing plant, like this one here, or even a variegated vinca vine that I recently took and I'm overwintering those on my rolling cart, I basically want to chop them way back. I don't want all this additional growth. It's messy. It's taking up all this room in my space where I'm overwintering it, and it's really not necessary. But when it comes to how much to chop it back by, you want to leave some growth on there because the plant needs leaves on there. You just don't want to hack it all the way back. But I say a nice amount like this. So a small amount of leaves, enough leaves on there so that the plant still has some sort of growth on the top, and when it does go outside during the day, I'm still feeding the roots and the plant is still able to photosynthesize. But eventually, January, February, March, there's no photosynthesis happening with these plants anymore. These plants are dormant. They're in the garage. And so I guess my best advice is you can cut them back by probably, I'd say, depending on the plant, by a good amount, like 50% or 70%. And if you don't feel comfortable with that, then cut it back by 30%. But it really depends on the plant. But all these trailing type of plants, I cut them way back. I just leave a tiny bit of leaves on the top. And if you're not sure and you have multiple of a plant, experiment. I'm always experimenting because that's, to me, the best way to learn is to experiment. If you have multiple of a plant, then with one of them, cut them back pretty hard. With another one, cut it back not as hard, and see if it made a difference. That's what I love about gardening. Gardening is one big experiment, and I'm always experimenting. Even with those elephant ears that I'm still sad about, I'm glad I experimented because I didn't take all of them out of their container pots. A few of them I left in their container pots. And fingers crossed, I'll have at least one elephant ear bulb overwinter for me. There was a question about overwintering plants in a raised bed. The question was some plants like a creeping jenny, plants that were definitely hardy in this person's zone. I think they lived in maybe a zone 5, and they wanted to overwinter some perennials that were like zone 3 in a raised bed. And what I said to them was absolutely not a problem. In fact, this year I'm overwintering a ton of plants in my raised beds. I'm using that space because I need it, and I'm healing in a ton of plants in there. So when you think of a raised bed, it's basically one big, huge container pot. And if you sink or heal in potted plants in that raised bed, generally they should be fine, but it depends on the plant that you're trying to sink in there. And not only that, but if your raised bed is very tall or very high off the ground versus one that's lower to the ground. So many different factors. So in previous years, I have healed in plants in raised beds that were very low to the ground. They were just barely off the ground. And those plants all did well. But then I also have some raised beds that are much taller, and in them I have alpine strawberries and blueberries, as well as raspberries. They all have come back for me, no problem in those raised beds. And the same is true with my asparagus, which is a perennial. This year, I'll be healing in a whole bunch of these small 3-inch pots in my raised beds. I feel pretty confident that those plants will do fine. They're all huddled near each other in the raised beds, and they're all hardy in my zone. So if I was trying to put something that was marginally hardy or not hardy in my zone and healing the pot into the ground outside, I think there's probably a good chance that that plant may not return for me. But I wouldn't know unless I experiment, and I'm not experimenting with anything that's not hardy in my zone and trying to heal the plant in. But if you wanted to, you could try it as an experiment. Someone asked about an update on SunPatiens that I tried to overwinter in my unheated garage last year. I had gotten a whole bunch of free SunPatiens, like a ton of them. It's not even funny how many hours I spent potting each of those up, but it doesn't matter. Not one of them survived. It's okay, it happens. The garage is probably too cool, but also I might have overwatered all of them, but I doubt it. I doubt I overwatered all of them. I'm guessing, and this is what I said earlier about certain plants that are like very watery. I call them watery because they are. There's like a ton of water in the SunPatiens and in Impatiens. Certain plants just don't do well in this cold environment. They really do better with more, like with sunlight or with grow lights, than being in this area where they're not getting as much light and where it's definitely colder. But one plant that surprised me that I experimented with last year in my unheated garage was some of the begonias that I started from seed. I thought for sure they were not going to overwinter, and they actually did overwinter just fine. I enjoy growing begonias from seed, but it was just something I wanted to try and see if it worked. So you just never know. I did have luck with them. They were just a regular wax begonia. In fact, I haven't done it yet, but it's on my list of things to do. I really should be doing it soon. I have some proven winter begonias that I dug up from the circle, the adopt-a-spot that I take care of, and I was going to try to overwinter some of them in my unheated garage, seeing that I had luck with wax begonias last year. So I will be trying that. I need to check on them, make sure that they're still alive. I have them in a 5-gallon bucket. You just, again, if there's a plant that you care so much about and you don't want to experiment with it, then you might want to bring it in and put it under your grow lights. Or you might want to put it in your basement. But if you want to experiment with it, I say try it in a few different places. Maybe put one in your garage if you have an unheated garage, and put one in your basement and one under your grow lights. Give them similar care, but the ones in the house will definitely need more water because it's warmer in there. The one in the basement would need a little less water, and the one in the unheated garage definitely would not need as much water at all. Speaking of water, I'm going to say it in every video. Check on your plants every month, especially the ones that you're overwintering dormant. Do not overwater them. If you overwater them, they're going to rot and they're going to die. I speak from experience, my friends. And I will make videos every month so that I can show you how much I'm watering them so that I don't overwater them for myself, because I don't want to lose my plants. So that's all I have for today for a lot of the questions that I've seen recently in the comment section of a lot of my videos. If you have other questions having to do with overwintering plants, be it in your basement, your garage, your shed, your greenhouse, in your house, please drop it down in the comment section below. I'll try to help you the best that I can. And if you found this video helpful, please hit the thumbs up button. And also, if you want to see more videos like this one, please hit the thumbs up button, because that will tell me to make more videos like this. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening. And wish me luck. I definitely need to tackle this. It should have been done like yesterday. So I promise I'm going to work on this right now.